Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are really undertaking a massive intellectual exploration, diving deep into one of the most critical and I think complex domains of modern defense policy. We're talking about the doctrine that governs how United States Special Operations Forces are used and integrated, especially now in this landscape of global strategic competition.
That's right. And this isn't just about, cool gear or daring raids. We're aiming to analyze the strategic and operational thinking that lets these specialized forces act as a crucial leverage point for the entire joint force. So for you listening, our mission today is really to distill the key insights from some foundational documents. We're talking Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, Joint Warfighting, Joint Publication 3.0, Joint Campaigns and Operations, Joint Publication 305, Special Operations, and the very timely Joint Concept for Competing.
Exactly. We want to get a handle on how these highly selective forces are designed, how they're actually employed around the world, and maybe most importantly, how they fit across that whole spectrum of competition. From that quiet, persistent engagement in what looks like peacetime all the way to high-intensity armed conflict. They really are, it seems, the military's main tool for continuously shaping the environment.
It really boils down to recognizing that this competition, it never truly stops special operations forces. They need to be seen not just as some niche capability or, a last resort force, but rather as this enduring, persistent, often low signature instrument that's essential if we want to achieve long-term advantage.
Okay, let's try and unpack this new reality then.
Yeah.
Because the doctrinal sources, they paint a very specific picture, don't they?
Yeah.
It feels like we've moved past clear lines between peace and war. Joint Publication 3 mil, Joint Campaigns and Operations, describes our current security environment as, incredibly volatile and complex. It talks about contested norms and persistent, often localized disorder.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is the nature of the threats themselves. It's evolved past simple state versus state dynamics. These sources point out that today's threats are often transregional, meaning they don't respect the neat boundaries of a combatant command's area of responsibility. They're also all-domain. They operate across air, land, sea, space, and critically, the information environment. And maybe the most challenging part, they're multifunctional. They blend conventional military power with hybrid methods, things like lethal force, yes, but also information operations, economic pressure, cyber attacks.
Wow, and that interconnectedness, that complexity, what does it mean for decision makers? Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, Joint Warfighting suggests it leads to decreased decision time for United States commanders. Everything is happening at once, everywhere.
And that brings us right to this core strategic idea. Strategic competition. The joint concept for competing defines this pretty clearly. It's the persistent, long-term interaction between actors who are pursuing incompatible interests right across that competition continuum. It's a continuous, dynamic struggle for influence, not necessarily territory.
And making that distinction between this ongoing state and what we think of as traditional conflict, that's vital, isn't it? When you look at armed conflict, the joint concept for competing describes it as, usually finite. It's bounded in time and space. It ends when one side accepts defeat or they reach some kind of agreed-upon end state.
Right, but strategic competition, that's indefinite. It's the marathon, not the sprint. It just keeps going until some long-term advantage is secured. So the real insight here, I think, is that special operations forces are almost purpose-built for that indefinite marathon, not just the finite sprint of war.
That makes sense. And the risk, if we fail to grasp this shift, it sounds huge. The joint concept for competing has this really stark warning, doesn't it? Yeah. It says the United States risks losing strategic influence, advantage, leverage. It even says we could potentially lose without fighting.
Exactly. If the focus is solely on preparing for that big war, that high-end kinetic fight, instead of competing proactively across the board day in and day out, if we're only thinking about conventional warfare, we basically concede the information space, the economic space, the political influence space, all to our adversaries.
Okay, so that's a major shift in thinking, from just war preparation to continuous integrated competition. And that requires aligning all the instruments of national power, right? Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, Joint Warfighting talks about orchestrating diplomatic, informational, military, and economic instruments, the DIME framework, effectively.
Yes, and this is where the military's role fundamentally changes, especially in this competitive environment. The joint concept for competing points out that the joint force often plays a supporting role to other United States government departments and agencies, which means the military might be there primarily to provide, say, the secure environment or the unique access that diplomats or development teams or economic experts need to do their primary job.
Hmm. So if the military is often playing a supporting role, which instrument becomes maybe the lead actor in this persistent competition?
Well, if you connect that to the bigger picture, like the transregional nature of the threat we talked about, you see the rising importance of the informational instrument. Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, Joint Warfighting, really highlights why it's so potent.
Hmm.
Informational effects, unlike kinetic ones, aren't limited by the laws of physics in the same way. Information can spread globally almost instantly, it can be employed pretty cheaply, and if done cleverly, it can be really hard to attribute. That gives plausible deniability to actors trying to achieve things below the threshold of armed conflict.
Right. Lethal force respects borders, but information just flows.
Precisely. And that makes it the perfect tool for adversaries who are engaged in this persistent, lower cost competition. And consequently, it's an area where our special operations forces really have to excel, both in countering it and using it effectively themselves.
Okay, so if this competition environment is marked by ambiguity, persistence, maybe non-lethal struggle sometimes, why are special operations forces uniquely suited for that complexity? It almost sounds like they were designed for this long game from the start.
I think in many ways they were. The Special Operations Forces reference manual defines them pretty specifically. It talks about small, specially organized units manned by carefully selected, highly trained people. They use modified equipment, and they're trained in, let's say, unconventional applications of tactics against strategic and operational objectives. Their success fundamentally relies on that individual and small unit skill, applied with adaptability, improvisation, innovation, often against adversaries who just aren't prepared for those kinds of specialized methods.
And that definition leads right into their core philosophy, doesn't it? Of the part that stresses people over machines. The four special operations forces truths. We really should emphasize these because they reveal the huge strategic investment required.
Absolutely. Those four truths are, well, they're powerful guiding principles. First, humans are more important than hardware. Second, quality is better than quantity. Third, special operations forces cannot be mass-produced. And fourth, competent special operations forces cannot be created after emergencies occur.
Hmm.
These truths really underscore that the true strategic value lies in the uniquely selected, trained, and educated individual. That's why the investment in selection, training, education, it's so intense and so long-term. It almost sounds like, we'd be willing to risk a $100 million aircraft to save a single highly trained operator. It shows that first truth isn't just a catchy phrase, it's an operational imperative.
That focus on human capital, that seems like a non-linear advantage in competition. But beyond just the people, Joint Publication 305, Special Operations outlines specific characteristics of these activities. They aren't just small unit tactics. They're activities defined by certain factors.
Yes, exactly. They're characterized by things like political or diplomatic sensitivity. Time sensitivity is often crucial. And the need to use lower signature methods. You can't always roll in with tanks. And critically, they often involve working beside, with, and through indigenous forces.
Ah, the partnership angle.
Right. And that demands a significantly greater degree of sociocultural expertise than conventional forces typically need or possess. This is often the real difference maker in the competition space. Special operations forces frequently operate in places where large conventional U.S. forces would be politically impossible or just operationally wrong. Those lower signature methods, they often mean operations are planned for the middle of the night, using terrain-hugging infiltration, trying to maximize stealth, minimize visibility, avoid accidentally escalating a situation.
Okay, so that brings us to the human-centric focus in competition. If the military is supporting information and diplomacy, how do special operations forces actually approach the environment on the ground? What are they looking at?
Well, Joint Publication 305, Special Operations, explains that understanding the human dynamics, the population, their needs, their loyalties, their grievances, that's critical to figuring out how to exert influence and gain advantage. The document talks about the competition for sovereignty, especially in developing nations. This involves the state government trying to provide real security, services, effective governance, basically things that increase its functional legitimacy in the eyes of its own people.
Functional legitimacy. What does that actually look like in practice?
It's more than just security forces.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. It's about, effective, non-corrupt local governance, reliable electricity, clean water, access to justice, things people need and expect from a functioning state. Special Operations Forces' role in this competition is usually to support that partner government's legitimacy, helping them counter internal threats like subversion, lawlessness, maybe economic instability. So they train and advise partners to help them fill those security and service gaps.
Oh.
Now, conversely, in a very specific scenario like unconventional warfare, special operations forces might operate to support resistance forces against an oppressive, illegitimate authority. But in either case, the strategic aim isn't just kinetic defeat, it's about influencing populations and affecting the legitimacy, the credibility, the political will of the target authority, whoever that may be.
Right, so while special operations forces are clearly optimized for that long-term competition, their role in preparing for and enabling large-scale combat operations, LSCOPs, that's also critical, isn't it? We have a source that details exactly how Army Special Operations Forces fit into this, acting as a force multiplier, often deep behind enemy lines.
Yes, that document, how Army Special Operations Forces enables the Army and the Joint Force to fight in large-scale combat operations. It outlines 5 specific lines of effort, or LOEs. These really show the deep area utility of these forces.
Okay, let's walk through them. Line of effort 1. Conduct deep and denied area sensing. That sounds like incredibly difficult intelligence gathering.
It is. It's about intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting acquisition way behind enemy lines. Often in areas that are supposedly inaccessible because of the adversary's strong defenses, their command, control, communications, computers, cyber, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems. What people sometimes call anti-accessoria denial environments. In those zones, sometimes sending in a specialized ground team might be the only way to confirm or deny crucial intelligence about high-value targets. And that information directly feeds the Joint Force commander's ability to plan deep strikes and really understand what the enemy's doing.
Okay, makes sense. Moving to line of effort 2. Enhance command control, computing, communications, cyber, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting. So this is about messing with the adversary's network in decision-making.
Pretty much. It's about generating advantages for our side by disrupting their systems and how they make decisions. And this breaks down into some very specialized activities. First, there's precision messaging. Now, this isn't like broad propaganda leaflets.
Right.
This is tailored influence aimed at very specific individuals within the adversary's command structure, people with power, control, authority. It's highly discreet. It requires really deep analysis of the target audience. And it can use varying forms of attribution. Sometimes we say it's us, sometimes maybe not, all designed to influence enemy decisions at key moments, maybe sow doubt or confusion or misdirection at the top.
Fascinating. And then there's the more maybe kinetic side of this LOE, strategic sabotage. This sounds like high-stakes disruption.
It is. These are operations specifically requested by the Joint Force Commander to go after high-priority parts of the adversary's logistics, their communications, maybe even their economic infrastructure. The strategic payoff here can be huge. The main goal is to create dilemmas for the enemy's operational and strategic level commands. The source points out that sabotage might be the most effective, sometimes the only way, to hit certain targets deep inside enemy territory, maybe heavily defended targets that conventional missiles or aircraft just can't reach reliably.
So by hitting those key nodes, you force the enemy to react.
Exactly. Successful sabotage forces the adversary to pull resources away from the front lines, troops, air defenses, repair crews to protect these vulnerabilities deep in their rear. And that creates secondary advantages for our conventional forces who are engaged closer to the fight.
That ability to create dilemmas from the deep seems like a massive force multiplier. Okay, so if line of effort 2 is about disruption, line of effort 3, conduct deep area partner force maneuver, this shifts back to partnership, but in a different way.
Yep.
How do they maintain engagement when they can't physically be there?
Right. This is where remote advise and assist operations come in. It means keeping up persistent, solid engagement with partner forces using secure communication links, especially in areas that are politically sensitive or where policy restricts putting U.S. boots on the ground. This constant exchange helps optimize what the partner force can achieve because you're sharing information and intelligence. But it also significantly boosts the Joint Force Commander's own situational awareness. It extends their ability to see and sense the enemy, and it creates opportunities to synchronize what the partner is doing with the larger conventional campaign. It keeps those long-term relationships warm and prevents strategic gaps from opening up.
And that activity, it serves a dual purpose too, doesn't it? So readiness conditioning.
Absolutely. Remote advice and assist can help build up partner networks, train them, get them ready, which sets the conditions for potentially transitioning to more direct support, maybe even unconventional warfare if the situation really deteriorates.
That link between competition phase engagement and being ready for conflict, that seems to be a recurring theme.
It's central. These networks, these relationships, they aren't built overnight in a crisis. They're nurtured through continuous, persistent engagement, even if it's remote sometimes.
Okay, line of effort 4 is psychological operations,
Ah,
or PSYWAR. How does this piece fit into the overall campaign?
this is where special operations, psychological operations forces become really key advisors, often to an Army Corps or division commander. They help integrate friendly actions and messages into the bigger operational level military deception plan. Now, it's crucial to remember military deception itself is a joint activity. Army forces don't do it alone, but special operations forces contribute significantly by planning actions, crafting messages, timing information releases, all designed to make adversaries do things or maybe not do things that benefit our commander's objectives. They exploit vulnerabilities identified through that deep sensing we talked about earlier.
Got it. And finally, line of effort 5. Enhance resilience, develop resistance forces, and consolidate gains.
Right. This one really ties the long-term competition activities together with conflict readiness. For example, building a partner nation's resilience by training their forces in internal defense during competition. That directly links to the ability to potentially support resistance or conduct unconventional warfare if an adversary were to invade or seize control. This persistent global engagement provides the joint force with vital access, placement, and those ready partner networks, all critical for setting the theater, creating dilemmas for adversaries, and just giving commanders a range of scalable options if things escalate. It's really the long-term strategic investment paying off.
Now, special operations forces are inherently joint, aren't they?
Hmm.
They draw unique capabilities from all the services. Let's maybe touch on the specific contributions from the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps components, starting with Air Force Special Operations Command.
Right. Air Force Special Operations Command's mission is clear. Provide the nation's specialized air power capability across the entire spectrum of conflict, any place, anytime, anywhere, as they say. They have unique aircraft, both fixed wing and rotary wing, specifically modified for things like infiltration, exfiltration, aerial resupply, precision air support, tasks that conventional air forces might not be equipped or trained for.
The Special Operations Forces Reference Manual mentions platforms like the MC-130J Air Commander II and the MQ-9 Reaper. Could you maybe paint a picture of how these are used for those lower signature methods we discussed?
Sure. The MC-130J is really the workhorse for getting special operations forces in and out and resupplying them either by airdrop or landing on rough strips, often deep inside hostile or politically sensitive areas. To keep that low signature, it primarily flies at night using low-level terrain-following flight paths to try and avoid being seen or picked up on radar. These are incredibly demanding missions for the crews.
I can imagine.
Then you have the MQ-9 Reaper. That's a remotely piloted aircraft, flies medium to high altitude, stays up for a long time. It has a critical dual role. First, it can act as a persistent hunter-killer, going after fleeting targets. Second, it's a premier intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance asset, providing continuous, real-time video and data using advanced sensors. Its endurance is key for that long marathon of competition. It can watch areas for hours or days.
And the connection between air and ground is handled by Special Tactics personnel. Who are they exactly?
Right. Special tactics is the umbrella term. It includes personnel like combat control teams, pararescue jumpers, tactical air control party members, and special reconnaissance operators. They are that absolutely essential, highly trained interface between air power and ground operations. They literally bridge the domains. Their jobs are incredibly varied. Specialized recon, surveillance, setting up and controlling austere landing zones deep in denied territory, combat search and rescue for downed pilots, and calling in precision airstrikes as tactical air control parties. They really embody that high-risk, high-reward precision capability.
Okay, let's shift to the maritime domain. What unique advantages does naval special warfare bring, especially maybe in coastal areas or waterways during competition?
Naval Special Warfare's mission is built around leveraging unique access, placement, and expertise. They aim to influence and enable solutions in the toughest environments, focusing on precision, lethality, speed, and certainty. They invest heavily in their people, recognizing that those specialized skill sets, like combat diving, operating submersibles, provide the real edge in the complex maritime environment. Their ability to get into littoral zones, basically undetected, is pretty much unparalleled.
And how do their special reconnaissance teams fit into the bigger intelligence picture, especially when maybe those good national satellite systems are limited?
Good question. The special reconnaissance teams are trained and deployed specifically to provide specialized intelligence collection, ISR, and analysis. The Special Operations Forces Reference Manual points out that this capability directly complements national ISR collection, which might be hampered by things like bad weather, terrain masking where mountains block sensors, or even political restrictions on overhead flights. These teams go in to get specific, well-defined, often time-sensitive information. They provide that crucial ground truth that can confirm or deny what the national systems are seeing or fill in gaps.
Okay. And finally, Marine Forces Special Operations Command, MARFORSOC. What's their defining contribution to the joint fight?
Marine Forces Special Operations Command provides Marine Special Operations Forces. And the heart of that force are the critical skills operators. They're the operational backbone. These Marines go through an incredibly rigorous assessment and selection process, followed by extensive individual training. This prepares them for the full spectrum of special operations missions, things like foreign internal defense, direct action, special reconnaissance. They're designed to operate globally, often working closely with conventional Marine forces, but bringing those specialized, often discrete capabilities to bear.
And they also seem very focused on the human domain, particularly with their emphasis on language, regional expertise, and culture.
That's absolutely right. That combination language, regional expertise, and culture, or LREC, is vital for enabling operations, especially during the competition phase. It allows Marine Special Operations Forces to actually communicate with foreign partners in their own language, which builds trust and shows a genuine long-term commitment. Their training pipeline includes an intensive, 24-week language program. Right now, they focus on strategically important languages, Arabic, Indonesian, French, Tagalog, among others. And that regional and cultural expertise then guides further training, ensuring the critical skills operators aren't just warriors, but also effective, culturally attuned partners.
Okay, so we have these highly specialized forces from different services, often operating far forward or deep into night areas. They absolutely have to integrate seamlessly with the larger conventional force, especially if things escalate to large-scale operations. This idea is called Conventional Force Special Operations Forces Integration, Interoperability, and Interdependence, or CF-SOFI3.
Yeah, CF-SOFI3. And it's a fundamental challenge, one that requires constant work. That Army Special Operations Forces document we mentioned states it pretty clearly. Achieving this integration is tough. It involves processes, it involves human capital, getting the right people in the right places, and it involves technology, the actual communication systems, the programs of record. It has to happen across the entire battlefield if you want to achieve operational convergence and really synchronize efforts effectively. If the different parts can't talk or work together smoothly, the whole effort can break down.
So what's the key to overcoming those challenges on a practical level, especially building trust between, say, a small, discrete special operations unit and a huge conventional headquarters?
Well, task organization and that human capital exchange are really paramount. Both special operations forces and conventional forces need to be ready and willing to exchange talented, competent, liaison teams, tailored packages of people who understand both worlds. These liaisons act as translators, essentially. They explain the capabilities, the limitations, the requirements of each force to the other. That builds the personal trust you need to synchronize complex operations, especially deep ones. And then there's the technology piece. We have to overcome the challenge of ensuring data can flow across different platforms and networks, especially when communications are being jammed or targeted in contested environments. Without that seamless connectivity, deep operations falter, and the Joint Force Commander loses critical awareness.
Right. That integration, both human and technical, leads us to the command and control structure needed to manage all this. The Theater Special Operations Command, or TSOC, that's kind of the main hub for managing this global competition day to day.
It really is the operational nerve center for special operations within a geographic region. The Theater Special Operations Commander exercises operational control over the special operations forces assigned or attached within that combatant command's area of responsibility. They play a key role in setting conditions during competition, mitigating strategic and political risks, and paving the way for successful follow-on operations if needed by providing intelligence and influencing potential adversaries. They're playing the long game at the theater level.
And then when special operations forces are directly supporting a large conventional force unit like an Army Corps or maybe a big joint task force, we see something called the Special Operations Command and Control Element, or SOCCE.
Yeah, the SOCCE. That's a crucial tactical level liaison element. Joint Publication 305, Special Operations, defines it as the focal point for coordinating and synchronizing special operations forces and conventional forces. It's usually located right there with the supported conventional force commander, maybe in their command post. Its job is detailed planning, deconflicting operations so they don't accidentally interfere with each other, and ensuring communication systems can actually talk to each other. They're there to make sure the conventional force commander understands what special operations can do, and just as importantly, the risks involved, and vice versa. It's about achieving that unity of effort at the tactical edge.
Okay, zooming back out to the strategic level for a moment.
Okay.
How do commanders actually structure these complex, integrated campaigns that might span competition and potential conflict? This sounds like where the concept of operational art comes in.
Exactly. Operational art is really the cognitive approach. It's how commanders and their staffs use their skill, their knowledge, experience, creativity, judgment, all to develop strategies, campaigns, and major operations. Fundamentally, it's about integrating the political objectives, the ends, with the military actions, the ways, the available resources, the means, while carefully considering the risks involved. It's this application of judgment that helps frame the strategic objectives and ensures those tactical actions, like the deep sensing or sabotage done by special operations forces, actually link back to achieving the bigger political goals. It's the art, really, of turning battlefield actions into strategic outcomes.
But the military rarely, if ever, operates alone, especially during competition. Success, particularly in these messy, complex environments we've been discussing, it seems to require what the doctrine calls unified action.
Unified action is absolutely paramount. It's defined as the synchronization, coordination, and integration of activities between governmental and non-governmental entities alongside military operations, all working towards unity of effort. This is essential, especially in things like irregular warfare or this persistent competition model, because it inherently requires working constantly with interagency partners, the State Department, USAID, plus multinational allies, and maybe even other organizations to achieve unity of effort, even if you don't necessarily have unity of command. Everyone doesn't report to the same military boss, but you need them pulling in the same direction.
So cooperation, competition, armed conflict. They aren't neat, separate phases. They're often happening all at once, in the same place. And successful campaigning means continuously balancing all three, often relying on the agility, the low signature, the specialized access of special operations forces to help coordinate that unified action, which, going back to that earlier warning, is required to prevent the United States from, well, losing without fighting. Hashtag tag outro. Wow. This deep dive really does crystallize the unique strategic leverage that Special Operations Forces provide, doesn't it? They're constantly shaping environments during competition, creating these strategic and operational dilemmas for adversaries by working deep and in denied areas, and then offering scalable, precise options if conflict actually breaks out. They really are the ultimate long-term strategic investment.
And the foundation of that leverage, as the Special Operations Forces reference manual keeps emphasizing, it rests entirely on things like stealth, specialized skills, and crucially, the foundational importance of human capital and partnerships. These are elements you simply cannot surge or create quickly once an emergency hits. Their ability to operate remotely, build partner capacity, it provides enduring strategic options for the nation right across that whole competition continuum.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Connecting these core Special Operations Forces principles we've discussed to a potential future of conflict. Joint Publication 1, Volume 1, Joint Warfighting talks quite a bit about the future, noting the rapid rise of artificial intelligence, the spread of robotics in all domains. The document explicitly states that the military that can make decisions fastest might gain a decisive advantage, potentially through using artificial intelligence.
Right. The sources acknowledge that AI could completely change military decision-making, offering incredible speed and analytical power. However, that same document flags a serious risk. The possibility that an adversary might use artificial intelligence in a way that's, quote, not congruent with our values. This could create really dangerous escalatory situations, maybe bypassing human ethical checks and balances entirely.
So it leaves us with this really provocative final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Given that decision speed seems to be increasingly decisive in modern warfare, how does the joint force effectively balance that? How do you balance the rapid, potentially non-human decision-making enabled by artificial intelligence and robotics, with that foundational Special Operations Forces principle that humans are more important than hardware, which relies on uniquely selected, trained, and culturally aware human operators? How do we leverage the incredible speed of the machine without sacrificing the ethical oversight, the human judgment, the cultural nuance that seems so critical for managing persistent competition and achieving lasting political legitimacy? That tension between the speed of AI and the irreplaceable human element, especially in special operations, that might just define the future character of conflict.